Timo Nishasane Kar Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Ahum Dhagi Jitsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Siksu So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Uyon Sunge Nawa Tsedo So Tseje Nyingne Solwa Debe Tse Dechen Korlo Visu Lekshu Ne Yila Sambe Dede Malupa Gemel Hunge Drubra Chinge Lo Tsoni Sodan Dikdun Shakpe Tse Dunge Namke Yinsu Lekshu Ne Lapchen Tsonye Yonso Tsopa Dan Cheran Nitun Chanwara Chingelo Chancho Parge Ninsen Tukun Tu Niu Peme Siudru Lek Chancho Drube Gegen Kunshi Shi Tungen Dela Drubra Chingelo Dagelo Na Chola Chokpa Dan Chemin Samchur Ngemba Shiwada Chedan Tumbe Dede Malupa Bemel Hungi Drubra Chingelo Dorna Tingne Tsera Tamchedan Teche Pardo Nekab Tamchetu Rese Kyamne Lama Keleme Tukche Chingi Dala Sikso Sol Gongyab Drewe Nyamda Dachala Chetsun Lame Tuche Rabgongne Kudan Sungi Nawa Dralme Tu Nyamsunyongwe Kesan Toprasho Kewa Kundu Yanda Lama Dan Rame Chiki Pela Longche Chin Sadan Lamgi Yenten Rab Norje Changi Kopa Nyurtob Sho Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Lu Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tukdan Dagi Yi Tenyerme Chikto Chingi Lo Makyuke Kudan Dagi Lu Makyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Makyuke Tukdan Dagi Yi Tenyerme Chikto Chingi Lo Om Muni Mahamuni Shakya Munye Soha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakya Munye Soha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakya Munye Soha Sashipu Ki Choshimeto Tamare Rabalingashi Nidegem Padi Sange Shintu Mikte Ulwarki Drokunanam Dashi Cho Parasho Yidamang Guru Ratna Mindrala Kam Niryatayami Sangye chedan tsoge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapso chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye drupar sho sangye chedan tsoge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye drupar sho sangye tsoge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye druparasho.
In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Namo Lhaye Ke Da Luda Nue Jin Ke Rupundanda Mi Ke Nam Dan Rupa Kunge Dranam Che Tsampa Tham Che Ke Tu Da Ki Che Ten To. Buongiorno.
Good morning.
Io volevo cominciare
I wanted to start with an image
di un contenitore
of a container,
e all'interno di
and
questo
inside of this
contenitore
container
ci possono essere
there may be
varie cose,
various things.
però possiamo immaginare
But we could imagine some beans, rice, lentils,
pensate quello che volete.
think whatever you want.
E poi dopo
And then,
fuori di questo contenitore
outside of
viene
this
messa
container,
un'etichetta.
a label is placed.
E su questa etichetta c'è
And on this
scritto
label,
riso,
it says
che cosa
rice,
è dentro.
lentils, what is inside the container.
Quello che accade è che
What happens is
se
that
noi ci chiediamo
if
di
we
che
ask
cosa è quel
ourselves,
barattolo,
what is that
certe volte noi diamo più
jar?
importanza all'etichetta che al
Sometimes we
contenuto.
give more importance to the label rather than to the
È più
content.
importante il
It's more
nome
important
che
the
diamo ad
name that we
attribuire
attribute
che
rather
effettivamente che
than
cosa c'è.
actually what's inside of it.
Ma se è o non
But
è un barattolo di
whether
farina,
is whether
dipende
it's a
dall'etichetta o dipende che ci
beans
siano
or
delle
not, does it depend on the label or whether there are beans
È una
inside
domanda
of it
molto
or not?
banale,
It's a very trivial question,
però spesso
but
noi diamo
often
molta
we give
importanza
a lot of
all'etichetta.
importance to the label.
L'etichetta si
And
intende
by
il
the
nome
label
che
we
andiamo ad
mean the
attribuire,
name that we attribute,
l'identità
the
che
identity
porci.
that we
E questo mi viene in mente
put
proprio
there.
perché
And this comes to my mind really
quando si
because
parla all'interno della
when
tradizione
inside of a
spirituale,
spiritual
si dice
tradition
che
we talk,
è normale in certi contesti,
it's normally some
quando si
context
cominciano
when we
insegnamenti,
start
si
some
va a
teachings
contestualizzare
to
quella tradizione.
contextualize that tradition.
Quindi per esempio si dice,
And so, for
questo è un
example, we say,
insegnamento
this is a
dentro
teaching
la
inside of the
tradizione
tradition
buddista, nella tradizione
of
buddista c'è il
Buddhism, and inside of
Mahayana,
Buddhism there is
il
Mahayana,
Mahayana fa parte del
Hinayana,
Mahayana,
and
dentro il Mahayana
this is
c'è la
Mahayana.
tradizione
Inside of the
Tantra,
Mahayana there is
fa
the
parte del
way of
Tantra,
Sutra
dentro
and
il
Tantra, and
Tantra
this is the
Tantra
part of
Padre, Tantra
this is
Madre,
inside of the
eccetera,
Tantra, and the
ok?
Tantra there is
Però
Mother
si
Tantra,
parte
Father
da un
Tantra,
primo
and
principio alla
so on.
base.
But we start from a basic principle
Qualunque
that
cosa noi facciamo,
whatever we do,
in
in
generale,
general,
si va a distinguere prima di tutto
we
due categorie.
make two general
Come se noi abbiamo
distinctions,
tanti
the two main
barattoli, dobbiamo
categories,
vedere,
as if we had many different jars
metterli,
and we
listarli.
had to kind of
Le
sort
nostre
them.
azioni
Our
possono
actions
essere
can be
azioni
either
corrette, mondane,
so-called mundane actions or spiritual actions.
però la cosa che
But
determina
what
se
determines
un'azione è
whether
mondana o
an action
spirituale
is mundane or
è
spiritual
l'etichetta,
is not the label,
è il contenuto.
is the content.
Poi nell'etichetta
And
possiamo
then
mettere
on
tanti
the
nomi
label we
diversi.
can have
Possiamo
many
chiamarla con
labels,
nomi
different
di
labels.
religioni diverse,
We can call it with
possiamo mettere colori,
various
font
names of religions with nice colors, fonts, and like images to make it seem more spiritual. That could also be that like a certain label made in more a certain way could seem more spiritual rather than not. So we can do many things like this, but actually what determines whether that thing is spiritual or not is the content. And what our intention is these days is to be able to dedicate some days mainly to what is about our spiritual part. But in order to do that, the first thing that we need to do is to have clarity with ourselves with what do we mean by that, and to try to go beyond the label. And that's something that we have already discussed about many times, but it's never enough. It's something that we need to repeat also because when we talk about the container of this jar, so to speak, what determines what's inside the jar and the container is not the words, the ideas, the concepts, but our way of thinking, of feeling, the inner direction that we give to our lives, and consequently the external direction. And we are made out of habits. And to repeat, okay, to know is wonderful, but it's not really so useful at the end. To know, to understand, yes, it's very beautiful. I've always liked to understand philosophy and to discuss and philosophize. It's beautiful. But on a practical level, at the end, to understand, it serves little. It's necessary. There is this way of saying that it's quite nice, that the realization of something is made of the 1% of inspiration and of the 99% of sweating. And so, like, to do the 100% of sweating without that 1%, this doesn't bring us to nowhere. So we need a direction. That's also why to know, to understand is important. Then these days we'll also get deeper into that, but definitely not saying that it's not important to understand, to know. This is the basis to be able to comprehend. And the comprehension brings us to be able to familiarize ourselves to then create some deeper experiences. But what we need are those experiences. What we actually need is to transform some aspects of ourselves from the deepest parts to be able to be that. And here, to understand, it's of little use in the sense that it's a first step. And that's also why that in order to repeat the same things, okay, like many of us already know, and also for me, repeating these things, it's a form of conjunct analytical meditation, where we review something and that this process helps us to generate that inner state. And so, let's first start from this first discernment, this first division, that is about any action that we do. It could be on a mundane level, or it could be spiritual. The definition that is given of a mundane action, or better, the definition that is given of a spiritual action that also brings us to the mundane definition. A spiritual action is an action that transcends this life. And so, what are the mundane actions? Those that are about the things that don't transcend this life. Let's make some examples. Our economical situation, material situation, does it transcend this life or not? Yes, no? No. Are we sure? Okay. So I can accumulate everything that I want, but the day that I will leave this body, like Lama Ganchen sometimes said, I do the checkout out of this hotel room before another check-in. What I accumulated during this life, I cannot bring that with me. And so, whatever action that is about the accumulation, taking care, also those that are the three sufferings of money. That is the suffering of having to accumulate, then to maintain and to grow. I must have 1000, I'm able to have 1000, how beautiful, then it cannot become 800. And then once that I have 1000, it cannot also just stay 1000, it needs to become 1500, 2000, and so these are the three sufferings of money. And this is not like a modern thing, it was already explained like a long time ago. So first I want to reach a certain quantity, when I'm there I cannot allow it to decrease, and then once I'm able to maintain it, then it cannot anyway remain the same, it must grow. And if we look at the macro, it's this illusion that our society has of a perpetual economical growth that we all know that doesn't work. And anyway, we continue to value things on the basis of the GDP and things like that. But this is another matter. Okay, now we're talking about ourselves, but the things reflect outside. And so the first things that are about the mundane world, which is not a bad thing, but it's not spiritual. Everything that is about the actions done for material matters, this body, can I bring it with me after death? No. So what is about the image, and also what is about the name? Once I was reading a book, very beautiful, about prime numbers. And it was a book that was telling all the part of it was telling some stories of the various mathematicians that made some discoveries about prime numbers and so on. One of the things, book very wonderful in many aspects, but one of the things that quite shocked me a bit is that what is told is that one of the major forces that pushed various mathematicians to work really hard like crazy to find some solutions is their will of immortality. Because when there is the theory of Pythagoras, one creates a theory and then it has that name and so on, there is this childish illusion of wanting to become immortal because someone will remember my name, when even me after that I will not even know that that was my name. Sorry, but if after that I've died, whether someone remembers me or not, what does it change to me? By all means, I'm dead, I am born again, who knows where, I will go on. So whether someone says, because the Lama, what does it actually change? But I saw this, it was crazy how many mathematicians, like very important ones, like very intelligent people, gave an enormous weight to their recognition, to the image, and not only in this life but beyond death. And so to be able to have a theorem named after him, wow, it was like super important. And so this is another mundane thing, because we cannot bring it with ourselves. So we have material things, the body and the image. Practically there are these three main things, then we have power and these things. So what can transcend life and death? According to Buddhist teachings, what I profoundly believe, when we die, what is death? We have a gross body, it loses strength, and together with this also a gross mind of the conceptual part, of the perception of the senses, also loses strength. And with that also, after that, we also have a subtle body. The subtle body is described like a part of our physical body that cannot be seen with the naked eye. So it's something that is physical, material, but a more subtle matter that with our naked eye we cannot see. For example, the impulses of the nervous system. Is that something physical or not? Yes. Are we able to see it? No. It is extremely similar. I wouldn't say that it's the same thing, but when we talk about the subtle body is strongly connected with the nervous system, with the circulatory system and the lymphatic system. It's strongly connected with these three systems. But anyway, with that, at a certain point also the subtle body loses strength, and with this also the subtle mind, which is the part of our mind that is non-conceptual, where there are attraction, aversions, emotions of various kinds, but it's a mental state that happens without giving names. It's like when you take that jar and you remove the label. And there are things inside of that, but that you're not able to give a name to those things. This is more part of our subtle mind. And then we have the very subtle mind. The very subtle mind. The most simple way to describe it, that goes together with the subtle body, which is an extremely light and subtle energy. They are inseparable. The very subtle mind, this was the very subtle body. The very subtle mind is where there are the imprints that we bring with us from one life to another. And then also during our life we change them, we transform them. For example, once I was reading an article, I read an article and then I also saw a short documentary on an English researcher. And she did a research on twins, genetically identical twins, identical, but that for some reason at birth they were separated. And so she studied for over 40 years looking at the lives of these twins. Okay, understanding, okay, you have the exactly same genes, but you grew up in totally different environments, different parents, different environments. How did your lives developed? What is similar, what is different? To try to understand how much DNA is important. And what she said is that DNA, she was explaining the why and how and everything, as a probabilistic reality and not non-deterministic. In other words, DNA, when one is born, is a potential that one has, a predisposition that one carries within, and according to the interaction that we will do, and here in the epigenetics field is called, that in other words are the interaction, the external and internal interactions, is called the outer and inner environment. And according to the outer environment, that is everything that I interact with through my senses, and the inner environment, so my own thoughts and emotions, according to these environments, then we activate a certain part of the DNA or another, that then opens up, and that manifests itself. And so, same DNA, different environment, result that is different. But I'm not able to activate a DNA that I don't have. I cannot experience something on a genetical level for which I don't have those genes. And then during life I transform my own DNA, and so the day that I will die, it will be a much different DNA rather than the one that I was born with, according to the experiences that I lived. Then, if I have some children, in the moment that I have a child, the DNA that I transmit to them, it's not identical to the one that I was born with. Of course, there is something that comes from my mother and father, and then there is also what I developed and how I transformed my own. And in the Buddhist tradition, it is said that what we bring, what we carry on from life to life, is what is called pakcha in Tibetan, that could be translated as imprints. And also here is described that the imprints that we have inside of ourselves, the seed analogy is used, and they can sprout according to the interactions that we have or not. Once Lama Michel Rinpoche went to his master, Kyabje Trijang Dorje Chang, in the 90s, at the end of the 90s, I think it was around
più o meno quegli anni.
at the end of the 60s, not 90s. So like 67. Lama Ganchen left Tibet in the 63, so maybe it was like 67, something like that. And Lama Ganchen was sent to study to the Sanskrit University of Varanasi. And the reality is that he wasn't interested into that, but at the time there was the refugee camp and the exiled government was managing all of that, so they took the list of the various lamas and sent them here and there, you do this, you do that, they sent them in the various places, and to Lama Ganchen, it happened that he had to go to the Varanasi Sanskrit University, and next to him there was one of his masters, Kyabche Sor Rinpoche, that was the rector of the Buddhist university that was close to there, and he wanted to be there, but he couldn't stay there. So he was studying a little, just like a little bit before the exams. I met one of his main teachers, together with Lama Ganchen, and he said, wow, he was a student, he was never studying, but always passing the exams, because he would leave in the morning, he would meet his master Son Rinpoche, spend the day with him, but it was a very difficult time where all that was his reality practically was vanished. There was no perspective of future that was clear. Materially, he had to choose whether to pay the bus to go and visit his master or to eat. So he would eat one meal a day, he would get to the evening, and then if he was hungry, it was just drinking some water, and that was it, and it was a very difficult moment. And so one day, he got his main master, Kyabche Trinjan Dorje Chang, came to Varanasi to meet Lama Ganchen, and Lama Ganchen told him, look, with all the respect, I think you made a mistake. Why? What happened? You say that I am the reincarnation of a realized being here and there, but look at me. If I really was such a special being, I could be somewhere else, enjoying my life in a pure land somewhere else. There are so many people that are doing so much better than me, I'm doing like so badly, what is there so special in me? Nothing. And Trinche Rinpoche answered him, look, first of all, I don't have any doubt on the fact that you're the reincarnation of that person. And here I do one step backward. When Kanchen Sapella was at the end of his life and was in good health and was very old, Trinchen Dorje Chang went to meet him for the first time in his life. They never met each other. And Trinchen Rinpoche went to visit him, that was older than him, a very important master, and so on. And Trinchen Rinpoche at the time was already master of the Dalai Lama. In Tibet, one of the most important persons. So when he got to the monastery of Kanchen, it was received very well, and we were talking about the end of the 30s. 39, 38, something like that. Maybe 37, but anyway, he got there, he got to the monastery, was received, and at that point, okay, I want to meet Kaja Sampella, one of the most important masters in Tibet, wants to meet the master, and usually the answer will be, yes, welcome, come. And so they sent a message to him, and he said, no, we see each other soon, not now. We will meet again, but not now. And Trinchen Rinpoche slept in the monastery that night, and that night Kacha Sampella died in meditation. He chose with awareness, he prepared everything for the cremation already, left everything written, left all things for the ceremonies and so on, and in meditation he died. And so, the next day, when Trinchen Rinpoche woke up, they told him, look, that Kacha Sampella died. So the fact that they didn't meet, and he said, we will meet soon, created that bound that Trinchen Rinpoche took in charge of the fact of finding his reincarnation. And when Lama Ganchen was 3 years old, he found him. And so Trinchen Rinpoche told Lama Ganchen, I don't have any doubt, absolutely no doubt, that you are the reincarnation of Kanchen Sampella. But he said that a tulku, a being with spiritual realizations that reincarnates in a physical body, when he's born, brings with him some imprints, some seeds. And until those seeds don't sprout, then it looks like any other person. And those are the imprints that one carries with him. And Lama Kanchen, and he said to Lama Kanchen, I'm sure that these seeds will be able to sprout sooner or later, and for our luck that happened. But that made me reflect on the fact that we all bring inside of ourselves some predispositions. And it's described like this, that one that lies a lot is born with a predisposition of lying. One that kills a lot is born with a predisposition of killing. So every time that we commit an action, and this we explained it last Sunday, we're talking about karma, every time that an action is committed, every action has 3 levels of interaction. It has a more cross interaction, creating a, so to speak, domino effect with the others that we interact with, because what I say, you're in this moment are listening, what you're listening to has an effect inside of you, so this action doesn't end in itself, keeps on bringing effects on all the others. At the same time, that action that I am doing creates a karmic force, like an inertia that I bring inside of me, and creates an imprint. An imprint means that the more I meditate, the easier it becomes to meditate. The more I get angry, the easier it becomes to get angry, and so on. The more I play the guitar, the easier it becomes to play the guitar. We are made out of habits. So every action that we do, other than having a so-called karmic characteristic that is related with the fact that that action creates some causes that then one day will have results, also creates some imprints. And so what is carried in the mental continuum are these predispositions that are the result of the imprints of the deep habits that were created. When one is born, those habits, does it say that for sure they will manifest themselves? No. Depends on the environment, on the conditions. And the condition is just like in epigenetics, the same thing. The conditions are the inner and outer environment. By the inner environment we mean body and mind, and the outer environment, the interaction with all the others. So what I physically and mentally have summed with everything that is around me, they go to activate a predisposition or another, a karmic force or another karmic force. So when we look at the long term, because okay, short term means like today, tomorrow, the next year, mid-term means until the end of this life, long term means beyond this life. When I look long term, what do I really care about? Money, body, the image, the concepts that I learn, not so much. Have you ever seen like a child that was born that did a university the life before and doesn't have to do it again? Comes to my mind a master that is called Tromo Geshe Rinpoche, and in his previous life it was a person that was incredible, with a tremendous level of knowledge. At the time in Tibet, already with 22 years, had already finished all the most complex studies that you usually complete when you're 50. And he was a very special master connected with Lama Michel Rinpoche, and his reincarnation had to study. Yes, and still studying. But I was talking a few days before with someone that knows him, and that is now like 22 or 21 years. And basically, he finished all the Geshe studies that usually one ends when he's 50, also completed all the Western studies with the maximum of votes, and is going to study psychology and philosophy in the United States, while he's doing all the Buddhist studies, and with 22 years, something like that.
Ha dovuto studiare.
He had to study, yes, but some seeds were there already. So when one has some seeds, has some predispositions, then it's more like remembering rather than learning. And this happens to everyone. There are some people that have predispositions for music, others that have predisposition for any kind of thing, where it's more like remembering rather than learning. And so this is really like a sort of sign that there is some imprint inside. And so, therefore, when we talk about the spiritual path, in other words, is about taking care of those imprints, because those are one of the things, some of the things that transcend death, because the rational part doesn't transcend death, the emotional part also not. And on one hand, we are fortunate that it's not so, because then we will be born with traumas of the previous life, so there is some reset there, which is fine. But what doesn't happen with this reset that doesn't remain are the imprints that we create. And these imprints are what determine our experience in our lives, and also what transcends this life. So when we talk when we talk about actions, and we want to say what determines what makes an action spiritual or not, then it's about the actions that transform with awareness those conditionings, those predispositions in a positive way. Then those are actions in the spiritual field, because actually everything that we do transforms us on a very subtle level. If I continue lying, or if I continue to criticize, then I'm creating that habit on a very subtle level. I'm creating that imprint, but that's not a spiritual action. So in order for it to be a spiritual action, doesn't simply have to be like an action that creates an imprint on a very subtle level, but when I choose to act in a healthy way that is good for me, to cultivate something beautiful that transcends this life. And here, in other words, it means to cultivate love, gratitude, respect, humility, awareness, a coherent view of reality, a correct discernment, concentration, compassion, together with love, up to getting to altruism, patience, gratitude. The beautiful thing is that when we think about cultivating and taking care of what continues after this life, at the end, then those are also the things that help us in this very life. Because let's imagine that I could live for 100 until 100 years, or 120, let's exaggerate. But also 100 is the same, like changes later. My grandpa got to 100, so let's think like that. Can someone give me the certainty that I will get to that age with a good economical situation? Can someone have that certainty? I've already seen people having a lot of money, ending with one, and also the other way around. Can someone give me the certainty that my body will be strong and healthy? No. Can someone give me the certainty that I will have beautiful people around me that will take care of me with love, with affection, with friendship and all of that? For as much as I have a lot of friends and a lot of people that love me, can someone give me that certainty? No. Not to me and not to you. And so, what are the things that I can cultivate today, of which I have the certainty that will be able to give me the necessary support from here until like 50 years? If I develop more patience, Will that help me?
Che io sia in salute o che sia malato.
Whether I'm sick or healthy, patience helps me. Whether I'm rich or poor, patience helps me. Whether I'm alone or in good company,
Meglio ancora se sto in cattiva compagnia,
then
aiuta ancora di più.
it helps me.
Ma anche in buona compagnia la pazienza aiuta. Se io sviluppo gratitudine,
If I develop gratitude,
stabilità,
stability,
amore,
love,
in qualunque contesto,
in
situazione
whatever
io mi trovi,
context
mi
or
aiuteranno
situation I'm in, then they will help me to feel better.
Quindi alla fine dei conti
And
quali
so,
sono le
at the
cose
end,
di
what
cui
are
in
the
questa
things
vita
that
lasciamo
in this
stare
life,
la morte, la nascita e queste
let
cose,
be
parliamo
it
di queste
death,
cose.
rebirth, let's
Quali
talk
sono
about
le
this
cose
life.
su cui io
What are the
veramente mi
things
posso
that
fidare,
I
che io
can
posso
really
coltivare
trust
oggi
and
e
rely
di
on?
cui
What
io
are the
posso
things
al
that I can
100%
cultivate that
fidarmi?
100% I can rely on?
Sono le mie qualità interne.
Those are my inner
Poi è
qualities.
giusto
Then,
immaginare
yes,
e
it's right
prepararsi
to
dal punto di
imagine
vista economico, prendere cura della
to
salute
prepare oneself on
fisicamente,
economical point of
costruire e
view, on
coltivare dei
the
buoni
health point
rapporti,
of
tutto
view,
questo è
to create good
importantissimo,
relationships and all of that. That
ma
is
le
all
cose di cui io
important.
posso
But the things that I can
veramente
really, really
fidarmi al 100%
rely
sono le
on
mie qualità interne,
are my inner
che poi
qualities.
sono quelle che
That then
servono
are
anche
those that
oltre.
are also useful beyond death.
Perciò,
And so,
quando noi parliamo di
when we
fare
talk
una
about
pratica spirituale,
doing a spiritual
e la
practice,
pratica buddista fa
and
parte di una
Buddhist
pratica spirituale, quindi prima di
Buddhist practice is
seguire o
a
fare una
spiritual
pratica,
practice.
un
So,
percorso buddista, io devo
before
prima
doing
aver preso
a
il primo
Buddhist path,
bivio che
first
è
I should
mondano
have
spirituale.
taken the first crossroad
E
between
qua
like
in realtà è uno dei
choosing
bivi più
between mundane and
difficili da fare,
spiritual. And actually, this is one of the most difficult crossroads
perché noi
to
in
take because in
generale
general
proiettiamo la
we
nostra felicità su
project
tre cose,
our happiness on three things.
cose che abbiamo già detto tante
Things
volte, ma
that we
va
have
bene
already
lo
said
stesso.
many times, but it's good to repeat them.
Tendenzialmente proiettiamo la nostra felicità,
In
e
general,
qui non
we
intendo dire
project
da
our
un punto
happiness,
di
and
vista
here I don't mean from a
concettuale,
conceptual point of view,
perché se si
because
va a chiedere a un
if you
buddista,
ask a Buddhist,
quali sono le cause
what
della
are the causes
sofferenza?
of
La risposta
suffering? The
classica,
classical answer would
le
be,
cause della
the causes
sofferenza
of
sono
suffering
i veleni
are
mentali,
mental
l'ignoranza,
defilements and mainly ignorance
l'aggrapparsi
of the
alla realtà come
grasping
se si
to
stesse in un
realities
mondo
that if it
autonomo,
existed in an
indipendente,
autonomous,
oggettivo,
independent,
che genera a
objective
sua
way,
volta
that
l'egoismo
generates in its
e
turn
guidato da questa forte
selfishness and
ossessione
driven by this strong
all'autogratificazione si finisce
attraction to
nell'odio, nella
self
gelosia,
gratification. One acts
nell'attaccamento,
with
paura, eccetera, eccetera,
jealousy,
creando delle forze
anger,
karmiche
envy, and so on,
negative che poi
creating
si
negative
manifestano
karmic
come
forces that
risultati
then
di
manifest
sofferenza a cui
as
uno
results of
reagisce con
suffering that
rabbia,
then
emozione e
to which
sentimenti
one
come
again
rabbia,
reacts with
gelosia,
other
invidia
feelings
e
of
finisce per
anger,
creare un
envy,
ciclo
and jealousy and ends up creating
vizioso
a
di
vicious
sofferenza.
cycle of suffering.
Bravo.
Wow, good job.
Passano 3 minuti,
Then 3 minutes after that,
anche meno,
but even less,
diciamo tempo
let's
massimo
say the
3
maximum
minuti,
time like 3 minutes,
succede qualunque
something
cosa è
happens like
colpa
whatever,
tua.
and then it's your fault.
Una cosa è capire,
One thing is to understand,
cosa è
another thing is
assimilare
to
profondamente.
assimilate deeply.
Quindi quando io chiedo quali sono
So
le
when I
cause
ask
della
what are the
sofferenza,
causes
dove
of
proiettare
suffering
la
or
felicità,
where to project
la
happiness,
domanda
the
non è a
question
livello
is not on
concettuale,
a conceptual level,
non è a livello
it's not
razionale.
on
A
a
livello
rational level.
concettuale
On
uno
a
può dire ok,
conceptual
io sono
level one could
studiato
say,
bene, mi sono
yes, I
studiato i punti di
studied
vista
the
della felicità
teachings
e
well,
volendo
happiness is
possiamo
this and that,
ripetere a
we can
memoria
repeat
tutti i
by
punti,
heart all the
carino,
books, and that's
ma
nice.
nella mia
But
realtà
in my
quotidiana,
daily reality,
dove io
where do
nel mio
I,
intimo e
in my
profondo
most
proietto la mia
intimate
felicità?
and deep parts, project
Ma
my
stiamo parlando del
happiness?
contenuto, non
We
della
are talking about
modalità.
the content here, not the label.
E di solito
And usually,
noi proiettiamo la felicità su
we
tre cose.
project our happiness on three
E
things
poi piano
that
piano,
then
gradualmente possiamo
gradually
trasformare e
we are
cambiare
able to
queste
transform and
cose. Però
change
di base
in this
noi
vision.
proiettiamo la
But
felicità su tre
basically,
cose.
we
Ed è
project it
così
on three
almeno
things,
sin
and
dall'epoca di Buddha.
it has been like
Già
this at
sappiamo
least
questo,
from the
perciò
time of Buddha,
non è
because he
che
was
siamo
already
cambiati
explaining this, so
tantissimo.
it's not that we have changed a lot.
Proiettiamo la felicità su
So we project happiness on
avere ciò che vogliamo
having what we want,
e conseguentemente
and
crediamo di
as a
soffrire perché non
consequence we
possiamo
believe
avere
that we
ciò che
suffer
vogliamo.
because we're not able to have
E
what we
avere ciò
want,
che vogliamo non è
and
tipo
by
voglio il
having
gelato
what
al cioccolato, no?
we want is not like
Avere
having
ciò
the
che
chocolate
vogliamo
ice cream,
riguarda io
but
voglio che tu
is
sia
about
così perché
having
l'altro sia
wanting,
così. Cosa?
like, okay, I want you to be
Noi
like that, I want the other
creiamo
person
una
to
nostra
behave
immagine
like that. We
idealizzata di come
create
il
an
mondo
idealized image
intorno a
of
noi
how the
dovrebbe
world
essere.
around us should be. We
Da
believe that
qualche
should
parte
be.
diciamo,
And somewhere
se
we
tutto
say,
fosse
if
come
everything
dovrebbe essere, io sarei
was
felice.
like that, then I would be happy.
Avete una
I don't know.
piccola, lunga
Do
lista
you
di
have a short or long
cose
list of
dovrebbero essere
how things should be in order for everyone to be fine. I have my own, I don't know about yours, but and I'm not talking here about wars that are far away that are also part of my list. But if we look in the priorities of our lists, very sincerely, usually starts from the closest sphere. So I want my husband to stop doing that, my wife to do that, that my children are like that my grandma does this, and that the body is like that, and that my wrinkles are not there. So that I don't have to do this job anymore. I want to do that other job. I want to be like that economically. I want the mortgage to just totally disappear. Okay, then what are the various things that I put there that if things would be like that, then I would be happy. And when we have this list. And this is the first condition that we put. We project happiness by saying that I will be happy when this will be like this and that will be like that. And as a consequence, the other side of the medal is that I suffer because I'm not able to have what I want. Because things are not how I think that they should be. Can we recognize ourselves in this? The second reason for which we believe to suffer, we believe to suffer because some things are not like they should be. So in the first one, I'm suffering because they are not what they should be. It's alright, but that's not what it should be. You should be more gentle, more kind. And in the second case, I suffer because the reality is how it shouldn't be. So I am in front of my objects of aversion, anger, hatred. Why do you talk to me like that? Why does that person behave like that? Why is it too hard? Why is there this thing, that other thing? So I believe that me, in order to be happy, I need to have what I want and to avoid what I don't want. And if we make our own list, are there also the things that we would like not to be there? So in the first list, we define the things that we will want to be there but are not there, so like behaviors, situations. And then there is the other part of the list, which is about what are the things that are there and I would like them not to be there. Have you ever said, in order to be well, that thing has to end? That person needs to stop doing that. We have this, right? And so we project our happiness in having what we want and avoiding what I don't want. In other words, is to obtain the objects of desire and avoid the objects of aversion. And the third point is that we project our happiness in keeping the objects of attachment. That means that I don't want to separate myself from the beautiful things I have. And so I believe that I suffer when I have to separate myself from the beautiful things, people, situations, objects, places. Can we see ourselves in this? So usually we project our happiness on these three things. And as a consequence, if we observe how much energy in our lives is put into these 3 points, how many actions we do, how much physical, verbal and mental energy, especially mental, we put in order to obtain what we want, to avoid what we don't like and to keep what we like. A lot, right? If not all. Spiritual practice demands an inversion of paradigm. Also because let's do an exercise that we've already done many times, but we repeat it again. Let's analyze a bit these 3 projections, because there is a basic fundamental rule that, okay, you should do what works. Does it work? Good. And so we, at the basis, we want to be happy and don't want to suffer. The first desire, first aspect, we project happiness in having what we want, that the world is how we think that it should be. Is that possible based on our experience? Is it doable to have everything that one wants, that we want? Also not, because the more I have, the more I want, because that will be easier. Like, I just make a list, I want it to be like that, and then that list remains stable, it just remains like that. And when I'm able to have that, then after a while I want something else. And so the basic rule is that the more I have, the more I want, and the more I want, and then the less I have. Because what I have depends from a comparison. It's a value that is attributed from a comparison, whether I have a lot or a little. So when my point of reference is what I want related to what I have, then what I have is much or little in relation to what I want. So the more I want, the less I have.
Una riflessione su questo.
A reflection on this.
Perché?
Why?
Più ne ho e più ne voglio.
The more I have, the more I want.
Una delle caratteristiche
One of the
fondamentali di questo
characteristics that for me are fundamental about this is that when we talk about wanting more, the majority of things that on which we project having is about possessing, having material things, is about the aspect of sensorial pleasures, to obtain the attention of the other. So if we talk about from a point of view that is inside of a bit more of a modern view, also a physical view, the obtaining, the having in this case is strongly connected with what happens inside of us, really connected to dopamine.
Quando noi abbiamo un piacere,
When we feel some pleasure, then inside of us dopamine increases. What is one of the characteristics and functions of dopamine?
la dopamina
Dopamine
e quindi conseguentemente il
and
piacere
consequently pleasure
hanno una funzione
have
molto
a very important function
che non riguarda
that
il
is
piacere
not
in sé
about
stesso.
pleasure by itself.
No, io sto qua bevendo
I'm
l'acqua
here
con
drinking
zafferano,
water with saffron,
acqua calda con zafferano,
hot water with saffron. I really like it.
lo bevo.
I drink it.
Che buono.
Ah, how good.
La sensazione di piacere.
That feeling of pleasure.
Quanto dura?
How long does it last?
Rimane a lungo.
Does it last
Passano i
long?
giorni.
Days pass. Ah, my water with saffron. So good.
In realtà dopo un po'
Actually, after a little while, then it ends. And when it ends,
cosa mi viene
what
automatico?
automatically
Io
comes,
voglio ripetere
I
quella
want to
sensazione
repeat
di piacere.
that experience of
solo.
pleasure. But not only
Più
that,
alto è il picco di
the
piacere
higher
di dopamina, più
the peak of
profonda è
pleasure,
la
then the
caduta
deeper
che genera
also
quello che
the
nella
fall
tradizione buddista viene chiamato di gopa.
that generates what is called
si
in
studia durante
Buddhist
quando si studia la
tradition gopa.
meditazione, che viene chiamato di agitazione mentale.
When we study
Quando io
meditation, we talk
finisco il
about
picco di
agitation.
piacere, quello
So
che c'è
when
dopo è quella
the peak of
sensazione
pleasure
interna di
ends, then there is
inquietudine,
that sense of
per
restlessness.
colmare quella
That in
sensazione
order
interna
to
di
feel
inquietudine, io ho
that
bisogno di acqua con
sensation, then I need more water with saffron.
che buono.
Ah, how good.
Perciò quello che
And
succede
so,
è che quando
what
c'è la
happens is
dopamina,
that when there is dopamine,
c'è questo picco di
there is this
piacere,
peak of pleasure,
e la dopamina
and dopamine
naturalmente,
naturally,
più alto è il picco,
the
più
higher the
profonda è la
peak,
caduta.
the
La
deeper the
caduta
fall,
genera
and the
quel
fall
senso interno
generates
di
that
inquietudine,
in feeling of
che è
restlessness.
quello che ci
That is what
permette di
allows us
andare a cercare
to
un'altra volta l'acqua con zafferano.
go and
È quello che
look
ci
for
permette
some
di
more
mangiare
water with
un'altra
saffron
volta.
or to
Immaginate
eat
cosa
again.
succederebbe
Imagine what
nella
would
vita se
happen in
mangiare
life
non fosse
if
piacevole,
eating will not be pleasurable
e se la fame non
and
fosse
if
spiacevole.
hunger will not be unpleasant.
Saremmo tutti morti.
We will all be dead.
Cosa succederebbe nella vita se
So what would
il
happen in
processo di
life if the
riproduzione non
process
fosse
of
piacevole?
reproduction wasn't pleasurable? There would be no one of us here.
Se il processo di riproduzione
If the
fosse
process
frutto
of
della
reproduction
relazione fra le
was
persone,
just the fruit of the relationship with people, then
solo la parte relazionale
just the
da sola sarebbe
relational
un'altra
part, then it
storia,
would be
no?
another thing.
Quindi che cosa succede?
So
Che noi abbiamo questo
what happens is
processo
that we
naturale
have this
nostro, che
natural
quando ci sono
process
delle
that
cose importanti
when
per
there
noi
are some
generano
important
piacere.
things,
Per esempio, lo
things that are
zucchero.
important for us, they generate pleasure.
Quando mangiamo
For
lo
example,
zucchero
sugar.
genera dopamina.
When we eat sugar, that generates dopamine.
il processo evolutivo del nostro corpo
the process of evolution of our body is very slow, and until a little while ago, inside of our process of evolution, how much sugar did we eat a year? Very little. I read like 10 years ago, that 10 years ago, and I think that things got worse. A child that was 6 years old during his life had already eaten a person that was 8 years old like a century ago. And our body, our system is not built to be able to metabolize all this sugar that we eat, and there are many studies, among which one that was published by a friend of the Sangha, proving the correlation between the increase of sugars and the increase of cancer. They really go hand by hand. Now, absolutely not have any sugar at all. Is that also good? No, they are important. But in nature, if we didn't have what we have hyper-processed now as sugar, like 100 years ago, it was difficult to find sugar. It's not for anything that in the days, like in some day, there will be like something sweet to eat. And that's why it generates so much dopamine, because like it's so difficult to find that if it wasn't so pleasurable, then who would ever go look for it? And so dopamine is the main fuel that makes our reward mechanism work. Our reward mechanism is our own capacity to put in effort for something, to have a goal and to put energy towards that something. But when I drink water with saffron and I like it, and I feel that pleasure that at a certain point goes away, then really, what do I want? The water with saffron, or do I want to extinguish that restlessness and go back to a state of pleasure? In other words, do we want the object or dopamine? We want the pleasure, we want the dopamine. At the end, then if you bring me something else that generates even more dopamine, then that's better. Then I just drop the water with saffron. You bring me coconut water, I like it even more. So, what happens here is that it's really part of our nature. The word system is one of the most important things that we have. And I add that one of the times that we have in modern times is that we have so much tools, the worst one, because like, okay, news also generates dopamine.
Mi fai venire in mente una persona.
Like it comes to my mind a person that first had the fixation of looking at the news. Like in the moments of break, he would check the news, and then at a certain point, he found some videos on YouTube that were really repetitive on just one thing, that generated even more pleasure than the news. And then he stopped looking at the news. And so that means that the real interest is not what is happening, but that entertainment, that inner feeling of pleasure. Because the news generates dopamine. Colors, sound, movement generate dopamine. What happens, unfortunately, is that when I have in front of me the possibility of having pleasure, of having dopamine, okay, like with something that is close and with something that is far away, something is easy and something that is difficult, to have more or less the same amount of pleasure. Which one do I choose? The closest one. That's the law of the minimal effort, at the basis of our being. But very often, what is best for us is the one that is far away. So what happens is that when we have the possibility of constantly having this state of pleasure, of dopamine, then we destroy our reward system.
diventiamo meno resilienti,
we become less
meno
resilient,
capacità di impegnarci
we
sulle cose,
have less
meno
capacity
capacità di
of
mettere sforzo, di
committing to
affrontare le
things, to put
difficoltà,
effort and to face difficulties,
perché io riesco a
because I am
soddisfare il
able to
mio bisogno
satisfy
in un
that
altro
need
modo.
of mine in another way.
Ok? E questo è un qualcosa che
And
è
this is something
particolarmente
that is
pericoloso.
particularly dangerous.
Poi magari se è il caso possiamo parlare di più nei
And
prossimi
then
giorni. È una cosa
maybe
che
in the next days we
personalmente a
can
me mi
talk more
preoccupa
about this, but this is something that concerns me,
Perciò
just also seeing in
più ne ho
myself and the others.
e più
And so the more
ne
I
voglio.
have, the more I
Altra
want.
caratteristica di
And
questo,
another
velocemente,
characteristic of this,
perché
quickly,
quando l'ho visto la prima
because
volta ho
when I
detto,
saw it the
interessante.
first time, I said, ah,
Il nostro
interesting.
corpo
Our
cerca
body
costantemente
constantly
l'equilibrio.
tries to find balance.
Quindi quando il nostro ecosistema
So when
percepisce che
our
c'è troppa
system
dopamina,
perceives that there is too much dopamine,
fa due cose.
then it does two
Uno,
things.
va
One,
a
it
nascondere i
hides the
recettori
receptors
dopaminergici.
of dopamine.
Li nasconde.
It hides them.
E questo porta alla
And this
conseguenza che per avere lo
brings
stesso
as a
livello di
consequence
piacere io
that
devo sempre
in order to have the same level of
aumentare
pleasure, I need
lo
to
stimolo.
increase more and more the stimulation.
E quindi più ne ho
And
e
so the
più
more I have, and the
ne
more I
voglio.
want.
L'altra
And
cosa
the
è
other
che
thing is that
l'opposto del
the
piacere
opposite
è
of
quello
pleasure
stato
is
di
that state of
mancanza, di vuoto.
void,
E certe volte il
and
corpo
sometimes the body
naturalmente, quando
naturally,
c'è
when
troppa
there is too
dopamina, va
much
a creare
dopamine,
l'opposto,
creates the
che è quella
opposite. That
sensazione
is
di quel
that
vuoto, di
feeling
quella
of
sensazione di
void, that
malessere.
feeling of
E certe volte esiste una, secondo me, uno stato
restlessness,
quasi
and according to me, there is
depressivo
almost like a
di
depressive
un
state of
vuoto che è il
void. That is the
risultato di
result
troppi stimoli.
of too much stimulation.
Ok? E da questo sono diversi modi
And
per andare a comprendere meglio che più ne
from
ho.
this, we can see that there are many times to understand that the more I
Perciò la prima
have, the more I
regola, io
want.
sarò felice
And so
quando
the
potrò
first
avere tutto ciò che voglio.
first rule, I will be happy
È
when I will
un'enorme
be able to
fregatura.
have everything that I want. It's
Inteso fregatura, inteso come illusione,
an illusion
che non funziona.
because it doesn't work.
Secondo punto, evitare ciò che non voglio.
Second point, okay, to avoid what I
Quante
don't
volte ci è
want.
capitato di essere in una situazione
How many
troppo
times it
bella,
happened to us to be in a very beautiful situation and to feel bad?
mai capitato?
Did it ever happen to you?
Siamo con amici, con
We are
persone
with
che vogliamo
friends, with
bene,
people that we
siamo bene
love,
di salute,
we are
non
feeling
ci
we're in
manca
good
niente,
health,
c'è un
nothing
bel
is
contesto
missing,
e
there
uno
is beautiful
riesce ad
context, and
arrabbiarsi,
one is able to get angry.
uno riesce a
One
rimanere
is able
tristi, riesce a
to
essere
remain
geloso,
sad
piuttosto che.
or jealous.
È possibile vivere l'inferno stando in paradiso, no?
It's possible to live hell being in heaven.
E quindi quello che
And
accade
so
in
what
poche
happens in a
parole
few
è
words
che noi non
is
siamo
that
capaci
we
di
are
vivere
not
il
able to
presente
live the present
svincolati dal passato.
unconditioned by the
E noi non
past.
siamo
And
capaci
we are
di
not
vivere
able to live
qualunque cosa intorno a
anything
noi
around us
indipendentemente da noi
independently
stessi.
from ourselves.
Quindi se io ho i miei figli
And so, if
di
I have
rabbia, di
my
rancore, di
filters of
paura,
rancor, of
eccetera,
anger, of
io
fear, and
vedo il
so on,
mondo
I see the world
tramite che cosa?
through what?
Rabbia,
Through
gelosia,
anger,
paura,
jealousy,
eccetera.
fear, and so on.
Quindi
And so,
tolgo una
I
situazione, ma
remove one
dentro di me quel
situation, but
filtro
inside
c'è
of me that
ancora,
filter is
io lo
still
vado a
there,
creare in
then
tanti.
I create it in another situation.
Ogni tanto qualcuno viene da me e dice,
Sometimes
Lama,
someone
comincia a
comes to
fare
me
questi
and
esempi,
says,
però
Lama,
mi è capitato
when I
in
started
passato
giving
che
this
qualcuno
example, that it
mi
never
Lama,
happened again, but
aiutami, voglio
in the
prendere
past
delle
someone
vacanze
say
da me
maybe,
stesso.
Lama, please help me, I want to take some vacation for myself. I'm
C'è chi ci
sorry,
prova,
there are those that try.
alcol,
Alcohol,
certe droghe,
some drugs.
ci sono tanti modi, ma anche
There are
stare lì
many
davanti alla
ways, but also just sitting in front of the
uno
TV like
cerca
that.
di allontanare
One
la tensione,
tries to get far away
però la
from
realtà è che quando
what
quell'effetto finisce,
he feels, but the reality is
torna.
that when that effect ends, then it comes back.
Perciò non è possibile evitare
So it's not possible to avoid everything that I don't
anche
want.
perché la
Also
regola
because
l'altra è finito
the
il
other rule
problema,
is that as one problem
ricomincia
ends,
un
then
altro,
another one
e
starts.
quando c'è
And when there
l'eccezione
is the
lo
exception, then we create it
questo è
ourselves.
quello che di solito
This
succede.
is what usually
Ma
happens.
perché?
Why?
Perché finché abbiamo
Because
dentro di noi
as long as
rabbia,
we have inside of ourselves
gelosia,
anger,
paura,
jealousy, fear,
rancore,
rancor,
odio,
hatred,
arroganza,
arrogance,
avarizia,
avarice,
alla base
and at the
egoismo,
basis
ossessione,
selfishness and
autogratificazione,
obsession with
ignoranza,
self-gratification and ignorance,
inevitabilmente questo si
inevitably
manifesta.
this will manifest in the world around us.
Perciò l'idea che io
So
per
the
star bene
idea
devo
that for
evitare
me, in
tutto
order
ciò
to
che
be
non mi
well, I
piace,
need to avoid everything that I
non
don't
funziona,
like,
perché
it
quando
doesn't
riesco a
work
evitare
because
uno,
when I'm
dopo
able
di
to
nuovo
avoid
so
one
che
thing, then after a while, it pop up somewhere else.
E il terzo punto, io sarò felice
And the
trattenendo
third
le cose
point,
che mi
that
piacciono.
I will be able to be happy if
La
I can
regola è
hold the
non
things that I
appena
like.
qualcosa comincia,
The rule is that as soon
comincia già
as
a
one
finire.
as soon
È
as
una realtà
something starts,
impermanente.
then it starts also to end. We live in an impermanent
La cosa
reality.
interessante qua è
And the
che
interesting
finché
thing
io
here is
vivo
that as long as I
credendo
live,
che io
believing
soffro
that I suffer
perché non posso
because
avere
I'm
ciò che
not able
voglio,
to have
perché devo
what I
vivere
want,
situazioni che
because
non
I have to
voglio,
live
perché devo
situations
separarmi dalle cose
that
che
I
mi
don't like, and
piacciono,
because I have to
io
separate
sono la
myself
vittima
from
del
things
mondo.
that I like, that I am the victim of the world.
Io continuerò
And I will
a cercare
continue
di creare
to
qualcosa
look
che in realtà non
for
è.
ways to create something that
Cercherò
actually is
costantemente
not
di
sustainable. I will
mantenere una
more and
realtà
more try
illusoria
to
di cui posso
maintain
avere tutto ciò
an
che voglio,
illusionary
vivere ciò
reality
che
where
non
I'm able
voglio,
to have
mantenere
everything
le
that I
cose che
want,
mi
to avoid
piacciono,
what I
che poi
don't
alla
want,
fine dei
and
conti è
to
la descrizione di paradiso.
maintain the things that I like,
Come
which at
viene
the end
descritto il paradiso?
is the definition of heaven.
Se tu
How is it
oggi hai una
described? Like, if
situazione
today
molto
you have a
faticosa che
situation
non
that
ti
is very
piace,
difficult that you
e
don't
tu dici
like,
no, ma rinascerai in paradiso, quella
and
situazione vai in
you're
paradiso
told
o no?
that
Fa
you will
parte
be
del
reborn in
paradiso o no?
heaven, is that situation
Diciamo che a
part
uno
of
non
heaven?
piaccia la
Let's say that
politica.
one doesn't like
Arriva in
politics.
paradiso,
He
c'è la
goes to
politica?
heaven.
No.
Is there politics there? No.
Le persone che vogliamo bene ci
People that
saranno
we
in
love,
paradiso?
will they be there in
Sì.
heaven? Yes.
Quanto tempo dura il paradiso?
How long does it last? Forever.
Il paradiso
Heaven,
teoricamente è quella
theoretically,
idea
is that
dove un
idea
mondo
where
idealizzato
an
dove
idealized
c'è tutto
world
quello
where
che
there
mi
is everything
piace
that I
e libero
like,
da tutto
is
quello che non
free
mi
from
piace e dura per sempre.
everything that I don't like, and lasts forever.
Però c'è una fregatura.
But there is
Diciamo che
a
finiamo in
trick.
paradiso.
Let's say that we end up in heaven.
Beh, noi andiamo in paradiso.
We go to heaven.
E se io porto
And
con
if I
me la
bring
mia
with me
gelosia?
my jealousy,
E se porto con
and
me
if
la
I
mia
bring with
invidia?
me my envy,
Ma guarda,
but look at the others, is doing better than me.
E se porto con me
And
la
if I
mia
bring with me
avversione, il
my
mio
aversion,
egoismo,
my
eccetera, eccetera,
selfishness,
cosa
and so
succede
on,
col paradiso?
what happens with heaven?
Perché basta vedere questo
Because you
pianeta,
can
se non
just
fosse
look
per
at
la
this
nostra
planet. Like, if
ignoranza
it
e
wasn't for our
purificenza, sarebbe un
ignorance,
paradiso?
our selfishness, and so on, would it be a heaven?
Assolutamente sì.
Absolutely yes.
Perciò,
And so,
anche se qualcosa concettualmente relativamente
even
semplice, che
if
abbiamo
it's
ripetuto tante
something
volte, vogliamo
conceptually
guardare con
easy that we have
sincerità
repeated
dentro di
many
noi
times, we need to look
e
with
riuscire
sincerity
almeno
inside of ourselves, and
momentaneamente a fare questo
at least
movimento di
momentarily, to
ok,
be able to say,
la
okay,
mia felicità
my
è
happiness,
inutile proiettarla in avere ciò che
that's
voglio,
pointless
evitare
to
ciò che non
project it
voglio, trattenere
on
ciò che
having
mi
what I
piace.
like and avoiding what I don't like, and to hold what I
Quali
like.
sono le
What
cose
are
che
the things
effettivamente
that
più ne ho
actually,
meglio sto?
the more I have, the better I
Quali
feel?
sono le cose
What
che
are the
riescono a
things
reggere e
that are
sostenere uno
able to
stato di
sustain
equilibrio, di
a state of
benessere
balance, of well-being
reale?
that is real?
Le uniche che io
The
conosco
only things that I know
sono quelle interiori.
are the inner ones.
Io non ho mai visto
I've
qualcuno
never
che si è
seen
ammalato per
anyone
troppo
that got
amore.
sick for too much love.
C'è chi si ammala per
There are
troppo
those that
desiderio,
get sick
mischiato
for
con
too
amore.
much desire,
Ma intendo il
confused with
sentimento
love.
di veramente voler
But I
bene
really
agli
mean like the
altri e
feeling
voler
of
che gli altri siano
loving,
felici,
wishing well
aprire
for
il
the
cuore agli
others, wanting
altri.
them to be
Quando
happy,
uno
opening the
sente
heart to
amore,
the
anche il
others. When
corpo
one
reagisce
feels love, also the body reacts well.
e più amore sento
And the
meglio
more
sto.
love I feel,
Io
the
le persone
better
più
I
gioiose e
feel.
felici che ho conosciuto
Me, the
fino ad
more
oggi erano
joyous
persone
people that I've met up to
con
today
tanto
were
amore,
people with a lot of love,
altruismo,
a lot of
pazienza.
altruism, patience.
Mi viene in mente Lama
Comes to my
Michel
mind Lama
Rinpoche, mi
Michel
viene in mente Madre
Rinpoche,
Teresa
comes
di
to my
Calcutta,
mind
mi viene in
Mother
mente
Teresa
diversi
of
dei maestri che ho
Calcutta, various
conosciuto,
masters that I
che
met, and
persone
other
con un
people,
grande cuore, una
people with a
stabilità
big
interiore,
heart, an inner
che stavano
stability,
bene,
that were
indipendentemente dalla
doing well
situazione in cui
independently of the
vivessero.
situation
Perché quando
where you
pensi
would
alla
put
vita
them.
di Lama
Because when you
Ganchen
think
Rinpoche,
about the
parlo
life
dalla
of Lama
faccia perché
Ganchen
l'ho conosciuto
Rinpoche,
da
I
molto
talk
vicino.
about him because I met him
Non è stata una vita sempre
from
facile,
close up. It wasn't always an easy
tanti
life, he had many challenges.
Io mi ricordo ogni tanto parlando con lui,
I remember
no, guarda, se avesse, parlando ad altre persone, se avessi tu visto,
as I was talking with him, like
tu con la
sometimes,
situazione che ho io saresti già morto, non regge mica.
okay, if I had that situation that you lived, I would have been dead. I wouldn't have
Qual è la differenza che c'è fra
made
una
it.
persona,
So, what is the difference between a
in questo caso
person
chiamiamo
that in this
spiritualmente
case
evoluta,
we
una
could
no?
call
Non è che
spiritually
quella
evolved and
spiritualmente
another
evoluta
one
va
that is
tutto
not?
bene nella
It's
vita,
not that the one that is spiritually evolved has a
ma
life
che
that is
riesce a
completely
mantenere
fine,
il proprio equilibrio,
but it
la propria
means that it
gioia,
is able to
la propria
maintain
stabilità
his
interiore
own
anche
joy,
dinanzi alle situazioni
stability,
difficili
also in
e non
front of
perde i
the
propri
difficult
valori, non smette
situations,
di amare
and
qualcuno
doesn't
perché quella
loses
persona ti fa del
his
male,
values, doesn't stop loving
eccetera.
someone because like that person hurt you.
Perciò
And so What are the things that the more I have, the better I feel? Love, gratitude, generosity, stability, awareness, the correct discernment, which is a different form of wisdom, to name a few. These are the things that we can really rely on. And so, at the first crossroad where we find ourselves, what determines whether we follow a mundane or a spiritual path is about the question, where do I project my happiness and my suffering, which actually is the same question with two different manifestations. In other words, is me, at the end, what do I want? And until I remain that idea of wanting to create an idealized word, an idealized image of how things should be. Yes, it's true, the love, but if that person would change, yes, it's true, generosity is important. Yeah, but look at me, if I had a lot of money, I could be more generous. Yes, it's true that this and that, but until we put the but, it doesn't work. And so, the first very important step that I really wanted to bring today at the beginning is this first question of asking oneself sincerely, okay, me, sincerely, what do I want at the end? And the process is that of recognizing what I want and to redirect myself gradually to want something that is more healthy, because we cannot pretend to not be what we are. So we project our happiness on an idealized image of what we would like. Yes, we know that it's an illusion. Yes, do we believe in that? Until a certain point. And then bit by bit we are able to replace with another aspect. And so to have an idealized image, but of something that is able to sustain that. And so, in these days, I wanted to read with you bit by bit some words from Atisha. Atisha is this master of the 11th century that we have depicted here at my right, with the one with the red head. And he was one of the most important masters of the story of Buddhism, that in our lineage, tradition, brought Buddhism to Tibet. And there are some texts, two in particular from Atisha, that I really care about a lot. There are some advice, heart to heart. One is the Garland of the Bodhisattva, and then another text, which is not a text with a specific name, it's just advices from Atisha.
Questo devo ancora preparare la traduzione di questo testo, ma lo volevo vedere insieme.
Still need to prepare the preparation of this text, but I wanted to see some steps. But the beauty of both texts is that whatever part you take, it works in an autonomous way. You don't need to go from the beginning to the end. The first one was written by his disciple Drom Tompa, and those were conversations between Atisha and Drom Tompa, these two very high beings. And there is an interesting characteristic for us in the context where we find ourselves. Drom Tompa, the main disciple of Atisha, was a layman, not a monk. We have his representation somewhere. It's there. Okay, see the entrance door. Right above, you see someone with long hair, up, with a flower next to him. Anyway, that is the representation of Drom Tompa. Did you see him or not? Okay, the door. Okay, just opened. That is the door. Then, above that, you see there are two Buddhas. That painting represents the painting of the story of Buddha. And then just go straight up. There is a tree in the middle. Below the tree there is the Buddha being born with his mother. And above him, above that, there is an image. You see that he has long hair. That is Drom Tompa. or at least that is the representation of Drom Tompa. Drom Tompa, for me there is a particular connection because Atisha had thousands of disciples, but his main disciple to which he gave everything was this practitioner that wanted to follow the life of a layman. If we look around, there are not many monks here. So there is also this aspect of adapting Buddhism for this reality, which means to adapt it to everyday life, which is fundamental. And so anyway, there were many encounters between Atisha and Drom Tompa where they talked about very deep things, and at the end of every meeting, then Drom Tompa would make like a summary and said, okay, to Atisha, this is the summary of our meeting, and then Atisha will say, yes, you're right. And this is found in an English book, the Book of Kadam, where there are these 23 meetings.
Se qualcuno vorrebbe leggere questo libro, Book of Kadam, sono più o meno 600 pagine.
This is more or less 600 pages written in a bit of an ancient way, but very beautiful, really.
In questi incontri,
and during these encounters at the end, there is this summary. And all these summaries put together create this text, which is called the Jewel Garland of the Bodhisattva, that I invite you to take the little book, where you can find this text inside. We made a translation and published it. It's a little book with a green cover. And there are 4 texts of mental training inside of it, one of the most beautiful texts that I know. And during these days, I wanted to take some passages of these 2 texts and read them together. The first text, the Jewel Garland of the Bodhisattva, starts like this.
Tetsum tamche pangchashin, abbandona ogni dubbio.
Abandon any doubt. Tensum means doubt, tanche every, and pam means to abandon. Abandon any doubt and apply yourself with determination in what you want to realize. And so, the first step that Atisha brings us, okay, the first thing is that you need to understand what you want. Abandon any doubt. It means that make clarity in what you want, and once you understood what you want, put energy into that. Because very often what happens in our lives is that we spend the majority of our life simply surviving in a comfortable way, or at least to try to do that as much as possible. Isn't that? And still, making a reference to Atisha of the other text that I was talking about, there is a passage that doing like a translation that is a bit interpreted, like not literal, but still correct. Atisha said, during the day we are distracted, at night we sleep, the objects of knowledge are many, and we will die soon. And so, the question is, where do I put my energy? Because how many situations have we lived up to today? Different situations. In other words, how many lives have we lived inside of this one? When I think about me, okay, I'm at the 5th. And by life, I mean like there is a moment in our lives when there is like a context that we are in, and it seems that it could go on forever, and then something happens and the context changes, the people are different, what we're doing is different, the place is different. In my life, I have more or less 12 years cycles. There is a moment where things then change. But those situations are not there anymore. How many beautiful situations have we lived that are not there anymore? How many difficult situations have we lived that have passed and are not there anymore? But we are still here. And when we get into a situation and we get out of it, so we get into a door and get out from another door, what we see as past, but we have transformed ourselves. We can never be the same person that enters from a door and goes out from another door, because one of the most important rules that we have elaborated a lot with the kids of the summer camp this last week, is that everywhere, anywhere that there is interaction, there is transformation. So if I interact with someone or with something, then I transform myself, and also the other transforms himself, but talking about myself, I transform. And so any situation that I live is a mean of transformation. And the most important thing is not really what I live, what I do, what I see, in what situations I live. The most important question is, in what way those situations transform me? Who was the one that got in and got out?
È chiaro? Perché non appena una cosa
Because as soon as something starts, then sooner or later will end. But when the thing ends, then yeah, I've transformed myself.
E qua, per capire un po' questo, che cosa vogliamo, ci colleghiamo velocemente con la seconda parte del testo, poi dopo ritorneremo.
And so to understand what we want, okay, we connect ourselves to the second part of the text, which says, abandon sleepiness, dullness, laziness, and always apply enthusiastic effort. And one of the things that I've always found difficult for myself, but I was able to improve bit by bit, but it's still there, it's laziness. The first time that I went to someone and asked him, look, I have laziness, you know, the antidote to laziness is effort. I say, thank you.
Perché Soppi è come dire io sono triste,
It's like saying, I'm sad, yeah, the antidote is joy. Yes, if I had it. I'm lazy, the antidote is effort, yes, but I don't have it. And then, once as I was studying a text that is called the 51 Mental Factors, and then this same teaching is also repeated in the part also how to develop the calm abiding of the meditative state. The following is explained. Enthusiastic effort, which is the capacity of putting energy into what is virtuous, is positive, is healthy, but is not easy, comes from aspiration. In order to be there, effort, there needs to be aspiration. Aspiration is positive desire, wanting something. In other words, I don't put energy into what I don't want. The more I want something, the more I put energy into that. And aspiration comes from faith. Faith means believing into something, believing into existence, to know something, to believe in its characteristics and functions. I will never put the effort to take some water if I don't desire water, and I will never desire water if I don't believe that water is pure, that water can remove my thirst, that I can obtain it, and so on. Then we will talk more about this, but the point is that when I don't put energy into something, it's because I don't want it, and me, often I don't want something because I don't know it. And here, there is one of the most important things along our spiritual path, especially at the beginning, but also after that, that using so-called, we could say, different terminology, we could say that we have to look at a lot of advertising. Advertising is fundamental. What is its function? To sell a product, or to generate advertisement, to generate desire. Advertising wants me to get to know a product in order to desire that product, to put my energy into that and to buy it. How can I desire something that I don't know that exists? How can I desire something that I don't know what the functions and characteristics are? How can I desire something that I don't believe that I can obtain? If I can't imagine myself with that, then I will never really be able to desire it. It remains something far away that doesn't manifest itself.
Quando stavo per la prima volta comprando una macchina.
It's like when I was buying a car for the first time, I had a budget that was very precise. Okay, I had that money, and me, in a very methodical way, I started studying. Okay, what were the cars that I could afford myself with that money, and that had the characteristics that I wanted. That basically were comfortable and secure and spacious. Okay, then I started searching, and as I was doing that process, I went to the Netherlands. I got to the airport of Amsterdam. There was a huge advertising outside of it of Rolls-Royce, and it said, if you ask the price, it's not the car for you.
Se chiedi il prezzo non è la macchina per te. E lì io mi
And
sono
there
chiesto,
I asked myself,
e se la pubblicità fosse,
what if
anche se non
advertising
ci credi, può essere la macchina per te, comoda
would be,
di 20 euro al mese,
even if you don't believe it,
10 vite. No, un po' come in Svizzera che si fanno i mutui di
be like
50 anni.
in Switzerland that you do a mortgage for 150 years to buy a house. Maybe you can do a mortgage for 200 years to buy the Rolls Royce. You want it? Yes. If you like it, okay. Then you can buy it. If you can give me the Aston Martin, I would prefer, but that's something else. And so what happens? Actually, also not that, but
Quello che succede che cos'è?
what happens is that, okay, if I see an object that I say to myself, how beautiful it would be, but I don't really believe that I can obtain it, I will never put effort to obtain it. If I believe that it's possible for me, then I will put energy into that. So, when Atisha tells us, abandon any doubt and put effort to realize what you wish, what you desire, first, in order to have effort, I need to have desire. In order to have desire, I need to have faith. In order to have faith, I need to know.
Perciò una delle
And
cose
so, one of the things that I've already said many times, that I would like to do, now we just do it together, but maybe sometime we also do it in a material, physical way, it's the Buddhist advertising.
Immagina la tua
Okay, imagine your life. Let's allow ourselves for an instant.
Immagina la tua vita,
Imagine your life
cerca come se fosse di dipingere
as
la tua
if
vita
you
davanti a te.
had to paint your life in front of you.
Osserva
Observe
il tuo corpo
your body
così com'è,
as it is,
con i suoi aspetti
with
belli, i suoi
its
aspetti non.
beautiful aspect and non-beautiful aspects, the body that you have.
Osservi la tua
Observe
situazione familiare,
your
le
familiar
persone con cui
situation,
vivi,
the people that you live with, people that you share your life
mettendo le
with,
varie sfumature, i vari
putting
colori,
the various
osservare
colors,
quello
various
che
shades,
succede,
start to observe what is in your life, the
osservi
people
la
that
tua
are there,
situazione
observe
lavorativa,
your working situation,
i compiti che svolgi,
the
le
tasks
responsabilità che
that you
hai,
do, the
i
responsibilities that
ruoli
you
che hai,
have, the roles that you have, what you do in life
dal punto di vista lavorativo.
from a working point of view.
Osservi il contesto economico in cui
Observe the economical context in which you find yourself,
il luogo in cui vivi,
the place where you
la
find
situazione
yourself,
economica.
your economical situation, and so on.
Osservi il contesto
Observe
sociale,
the social
culturale.
context, cultural context.
Più o meno cerchi di fare una
Try
fotografia il
to
più dettagliata possibile,
take
come un dipinto,
a very
della vita
detailed
che hai oggi,
photograph of the life that you have today,
senza entrare nello ieri, senza
without getting into
pensare al
the
domani.
yesterday
Oggi,
or
quello
the
che
tomorrow, today, what you have.
riusciamo più o meno?
Are we able to do it?
Adesso ci
Okay,
permettiamo un attimo
now
di sognare.
we allow ourselves to dream a bit.
Immagina come sarebbe
Imagine
la tua vita,
how would your
il
life
corpo
be
che hai,
with the body that you
con le
have,
persone che fanno
with the
parte della tua
people that are
vita,
part
con
of
il
your
lavoro
life,
che hai, con
with
la
the job that you
situazione
have, with
economica
the
che hai,
economic
la vita
situation
che
that you have,
hai,
the
con
life that you
alcuni
have,
piccoli cambiamenti.
with some little changes.
Come sarebbe la tua stessa
How
vita
would your same
se
life
tu non
be
stessi più
if you wouldn't
ad aspettarti
be
come le cose dovrebbero
expecting
essere?
how things
Se
should be?
sapresti accogliere ciò
If
che
you will
c'è.
be able to welcome what is
Come
there?
sarebbe la tua vita
How would your life
se
be
non stessi più a
if
soffrire
you
quando
wouldn't
vedi che
suffer
c'è
when
cambiamento,
you
e
see that there is
sapresti
some
accogliere
change
la
and you
natura
were
immanente
able
di
to
tutto?
welcome the impermanent
Vivere
nature of
potenziale
everything,
nella tua
seeing the
situazione.
potential in
Come
transformation?
sarebbe la tua vita
How
se
would
non
your
ti
life
trovassi
be
più nella
if you wouldn't
difensiva e nell'attacco,
be anymore on the
se
defense or
sapresti
on the
accogliere
attack,
ognuno con amore,
welcoming everyone
con
with
affetto?
love, with affection?
Come sarebbe la tua vita
How
se
would
non
your
fossi
life
più
be
insoddisfatto e
if you
fossi
wouldn't be
soddisfatto?
anymore dissatisfied, and if you would be satisfied, being able to see what is there rather than what is not, how would your life be if you had the capacity of being present in the present, of directing the mind with gentleness towards what you want, and the mind follows that? How would your life be if you would be in harmony with yourself and the others?
Vuoi questa vita o
Do you
no?
want this life or not?
Sì?
Yes?
La puoi ottenere per
You can obtain it with easy, comfortable
piccoli momenti di
installments
consapevolezza e
and
meditazione.
small moments of awareness and meditations.
E la realtà è che è possibile.
And the reality is that it's possible.
Se noi non ci permettiamo di sognare, di
If we
desiderare,
don't allow ourselves to dream, what we will end up doing is to continue going around repeating the habits that we already have
e lasciandoci condizionare e
and
manipolare
letting
dal
ourselves to be
intorno a noi.
conditioned and manipulated by the world around us. That it's not that there is someone that wants us to, according to me, but the fact is that the habit of someone influences the habit of someone else.
E noi viviamo in un
And
mondo
we live in a
dove la
world
priorità
where the priority
non sono gli aspetti spirituali, ma gli aspetti
is
mondani,
not the spiritual aspect but the mundane aspect,
dove
where
una persona di successo
a successful
è qualcuno
person
che ha
is
creato
someone
buone
that has created
predisposizioni,
good
o è qualcuno che ha
predisposition,
avuto soldi,
or someone that had
potere, carriera,
money,
eccetera.
wealth, career, power.
Certe volte noi vediamo persone di successo, persone del mondo dello spettacolo, poi che
Sometimes we see like people, like famous people, like show people that then feel like very bad. For me, like successful person is a person that is joyous, stable, that is in harmony with oneself and the other. That is a real example of success. One can have a lot of money, but then if he is always stressed and can't sleep and is full of anxiety, what is successful about that?
Perciò quando Atisha ti dice
So when Atisha tells you abandon any doubt, that's because to choose the direction is not easy. Mostly because we are strongly conditioned by for a long time by a certain path. And when we take the same path again and again, then it's difficult to change path, even when the other one is more beautiful, because we are made of habits.
Perciò una delle cose che io vorrei in
So one of the things that I would like for these days, and if we are able to do this, then I am already very happy, is to ask oneself sincerely the question, me in this moment, where am I going and where do I want to go?
E per me la domanda
And for me, the question of where I want to get to is a question that is much more connected to what I want to become rather than what I want to do or what I want to have. I know that this is something that we have already seen again and again, but it's not enough. We need to ask ourselves the question with sincerity.
perché se no c'è anche il
Because otherwise there is also the danger that we ask ourselves the question once and then at a certain point it moves something inside of us and then we put a nice label on ourselves and we tell ourselves that we're Buddhist and so I'm a person that is spiritual and we put the label there that in that moment it matches what is there and what we want to be there, but we remain so attached to the label and we don't realize that everything is changing and we remain attached to the label and the content is changed.
L'importante non è l'etichetta.
And the important thing is not the label, the important thing is the content.
Perciò
And so
non è se io mi ritengo una persona
it's not about whether I believe that I am a spiritual person or not, but what do I actually want and consequently where do I put my energy into.
Okay. Per questo
And for this
partiamo da questo primo
we
presupposto.
start from
Cosa è
this
più importante per me? Quello che accade intorno o
beginning
come
place.
lo
Okay, what is more important for me? What happens around me or how I live it?
Anche perché
Also because
una delle cose che con i bambini
one
in
of the
questi giorni
things that
abbiamo
these
affrontato,
days we have also faced with the kids
a volte è affezionato con i più piccoli,
and
Freddy,
worked
no?
even better with the youngest ones, between like the 9 and 11 years old,
Se c'è un problema,
that we talked about the fact that if there is a problem, it's because there is a solution. And if there is no solution, that's because that's a fact.
non è un problema.
It's not a problem.
Ma capire questo già.
And to understand this, then it really changes one's own life.
Se c'è un problema è perché c'è
If
una
there is a
soluzione,
problem,
se non c'è
because
una
it's
soluzione,
because
perché
there is
è
a
fatto.
solution,
Come
and
diceva
if there is no
Shantideva,
solution, then it's a
Bodhisattva
fact.
Charavattara,
As Shantideva
hai
was
un
saying
problema
in the Bodhisattva
e lo puoi
Charavattara,
risolvere, ma perché
you have a
arrabbiarti?
problem
Perché star
and you can
male?
solve it,
C'è una
then
soluzione.
why to feel bad about it? You
Hai
have a
un
solution
problema
anyway.
e non lo puoi
You have a
risolvere,
problem
ma
and you
perché
can't
star male?
solve it,
Perché
then why
arrabbiarti? Non lo
to
puoi
feel bad about it and to get angry? Because you can't solve it.
Quindi è quello che ci siamo detti questi
So
giorni.
what
C'è un
we
problema,
told
è perché c'è una
each other these
soluzione.
days,
Non c'è una
okay,
soluzione, è
if there
perché
is
è
a
un fatto.
problem, then there is a solution. If there is no solution, it's a
E
fact.
in questo
And
viene la domanda che è:
with this
io
comes the
voglio
question,
condizionare il mondo o voglio
do I want to
trasformare il
condition the
mio modo di
world
vivere?
or do I want to change my way of living
Ed è
things?
ovviamente che
And
trasformando il
of
nostro
course,
modo di
it's
vivere nel
by
mondo,
transforming
noi
our way of living the
naturalmente
world that
andremo
we
a cambiare il
naturally
mondo.
will change the world.
Perché quando io guardo il
Because
mondo
when I look
intorno a
at the
me,
world around me,
quello di cui noi
what
più abbiamo
we
bisogno
need the most,
non sono di nuove tecnologie,
it's not new technologies,
non sono di
it's not
sistemi politici
political systems that are different, new, for as much as technology can be wonderful, or for as much as some political systems cannot work in a certain context, or some systems could be better. But what we actually need, I can give so many examples of beautiful things, but that's not what we really need. What we really need is people that are more love and less selfishness, that have more satisfaction and less dissatisfaction. We need more people that are able to see that the collective good is more important than the individual good, and that me personally I will not be able to feel well if the whole is not well. We need human qualities. That's also quite arrogant and selfish to say human. They're not really human. Why dog doesn't have compassion?
qualità interiori.
Inner qualities.
Dobbiamo sviluppare
We need to
queste
develop
questo di cui il mondo
these
più
qualities. This is what the world needs the most,
e anche per noi stessi.
and also for ourselves.
Perciò
And so
abbandoniamo ogni dubbio.
let's abandon any
Mettiamoci
doubt
chiarezza sulle
and
cose
have
che
clarity
vogliamo.
on what we
E una
want.
volta che io ho
And
chiarezza
once that I
sulle
have
cose
clarity in what I want,
ho fatto
then
1%.
I did the 1%.
Drubla neden cesu cha. Applichi.
Apply.
Drubla neden cesu cha. Applicati con
Apply yourself with determination to realize what you want.
E qui è una questione
And
di
here
cambiare
is a matter of changing habit. That's why we need repetition. We need effort. Or I could say, I want to be here, but then when he realizes already ended up somewhere else and wants to take it back. And so it's like taking back oneself again and again because it's a matter of habit. The good news is that the habits can be created and we don't have the choice actually of creating an habit or not creating. We are constantly transforming ourselves and creating habit of any kind. The more I act in a certain way, the more I create a habit of a certain kind, the easier it becomes to be like that. And so, repeating one last time, the goal is not where I am or what I'm doing, but who am I, who I am, and how do I live that. And this also brings us to importance of having healthy values. The importance of being able to value truth, to being able to value life, to give value to the other, to a healthy relationship, to mental clarity, because the most powerful tool that we have is our own mind, then we make it numb with substances.
Veramente questo è un punto che non riesco a capire ogni
A point that sometimes I can't understand, in the sense that, okay, the most precious and powerful thing that we have is our own mind. Then we need to take care of it quite well.
Perciò
And so
avere chiarezza dei nostri
to
valori,
have clarity on our values, of what we want. And this also brings us to another point, if we want to put it together quickly.
abbandono ogni dubbio,
Let's abandon any doubt and set yourself with determination to realize what you want. This is also about the collectiveness. This means also have clarity on what you wish for the world, in what world you would like to live, and do anything that is possible in order to act in a coherent way with the world that you would like to live in.
secondo me, io non devo
According to me, I shouldn't fight against anyone or anything. I should be what I want to become. I should live in a way that is totally coherent with the world in which I would like to live.
E così piano piano,
And like that, bit by bit, we build it together.
ed è qua che c'è la speranza.
And that's where the real hope is.
Perciò, per me
And
l'obiettivo
so, for me, the goal during these days that we are together, actually, this moment of Dharma in nature comes from an idea that was that of creating a moment of a sort of meaningful holiday. Like, as Lama Ganchen sometimes would say, he was playing with words sometimes, we need to make our holidays holy days.
trasformare le vacanze in giornate sacre. Ma la giornata sacra
So the a holiday is what is the way that I live it internally, the way that it transforms me. So what I was thinking is that often many people spend their lives working a lot, but also to have some meaningful days where one also relaxes and there is something a bit more light, rather than just doing like a closed retreat of 12 hours of meditation with a certain rigidity and everything. That's also tiring. So the idea to take some days, like 7, we can, or 1 or 2, where we have some relaxed moments together, to be able to reflect on the important things, to be able to meditate together, to be in nature a bit. Also this afternoon we will meet again at 3 to go in the woods, and there is a point here in the woods that I particularly like. And this also opens us to the fact that the center is here, but there is a whole part that extends itself in the woods, but that is very important, but that sometimes is not lived at all. And then there are other activities of various conferences, other activities, to live this moment of sharing that brings as a main starting point the choice of a spiritual path. Then we have Nabim that will do yoga in the morning. I will do the meditation. Then Nabim is not a yoga teacher. Nabim is a yogi.
non so se Nabin è qui
I
adesso o
don't know if
meno.
Nabim is here or not.
Nabin lo conosco.
Nabim, I know him, is a person that lives his life. His life is practice. There is no distinction. It's not someone that did the course and took the diploma to teach. Maybe can teach asanas very well, with all the respect, but Nabim for me is a person that embodies the principles and values of the yoga in any way, is really a yogi of modern times. So for me, who has the possibility of being able to do this experience with him in the morning, according to me, is something very beautiful.
E quello che io vi invito anche è nei
And what I invite you also to do is that in the moments between one activity and the other, how do we live that? Because that's also important. And there is one thing in particular that we did with the kids during the summer camp, and I also invite you to do. I cannot do as we did with the kids. I would like to do that, but I don't think that it's really appropriate. That is that of taking the phones of everyone,
Secondo me sarebbe
confiscate them. According to me, yeah, that would be good for everyone.
però se voi potete
But if you're able to allow yourselves to use this terrifying object as little as possible, I don't even talk about as little as possible, the minimum necessary. like, okay, if I need to check messages, I have those 2 moments in the day to check messages. If I need to check email, there is 1 moment in the day to read them. The news, don't worry, 1 week later, more or less, will be the same.
Perciò guardare il meteo non
To
vi
check the weather, don't worry. So, because like whether you check or not, what happens is the same thing. So you don't have to choose your clothes. You're here anyway. So if you can really detox, and we can really detox from this constant flow of information that we receive, and to allow ourselves to be in silence a bit, to take a walk in the woods, also without having to go really far away, to be able to be coherent between one session and the other with what we do. That's also something that is important. And then, bit by bit, day by day, we go deeper in various aspects, but today I wanted to put more emphasis on this question: what do I want? So that we can abandon any doubt and set ourselves with determination on what we really want.
Io chiederei una cosa.
I would like to ask one thing to see how we can organize ourselves from a practical point of view for the part that is about everyone coming to say hi, to ask something that I really like, but we need to organize ourselves because there are a lot of us here. And also for respect towards who's in the kitchen and serves food, because if there is lunch and then we are here until 2 and something, then it becomes complicated. Then I also have who scolds me because I also need to eat, and so in the whole, and I asked that, okay, when we do, okay, now we do the dedications, and then we will find during these days the moments to talk with everyone and to take a moment to say hi. We will get a moment for that. But now let's make our dedications, and we particularly dedicate so that each one of us can by all means have clarity on what he wants or she wants, where he or she wants to go. And let's remember that this abandon any doubt is not something that needs to be done just once. It's not like something that you do once and that's it, but needs to be repeated again and again and again and again and again, so that eventually there is clarity on it. And this state of clarity on what I want is what is called the first realization in the spiritual path. And the Tibetan term is used of Nechung, translated very badly as renunciation. More correct translation is definitive emergence. To emerge really in the sense that I am underwater and I can emerge, I can go out. Underwater, by underwater we mean the ocean of suffering of samsara from which I can emerge, the certainty of emergence. The certainty of being able to say, okay, I want this state of peace, of balance that comes from me and not from out, and this for me is the priority. And when we're able to generate this, then everything else comes in a much more spontaneous way. This is also what is called falling in love with inner peace. Because as long as it remains in my head and it's conceptual, then it's difficult. When it becomes a deep passion, wow, at that point everything comes much more smoothly, which doesn't mean that there are no difficulties, but it's just much more smoothly. And so abandoning doubt, allow yourself to fall in love with that inner peace, to have that clarity. Remember, reminding ourselves that this doesn't mean to abandon family, to abandon the job, to abandon all of that. Those are still part of life, and that's fine, and there are many positive aspects on many things, but where the goal is how I live my life and not what life I live. In the meanwhile, yes, there are friends, family, job and everything, but let's try to cultivate really the way that we live it. So this as a direction is something that we need to renew often, because we need to change a paradigm. It's a change of paradigm that requires a lot of repetition, a lot of time. Also because the paradigm in which we are in doesn't come from this life. We are already born with predispositions of the paradigm in which we find ourselves. And then there is the influence of society, cultures, context. So to make a change, then we need time. That's why abandoning doubt, put energy, effort in what you believe in. And so to do it and repeat it more times. Now let's make the dedications. So still Atisha in the same text said there are two actions, one at the beginning and one at the end. That means that when we start something, it's important to generate the motivation. When we end something, to dedicate that action to something positive and virtuous. Then these days we will also get more into the details of this point. So we have generated the motivation at the beginning with the prayers, now we do a final dedication.
Shide Semcho Rinpoche Make Panama Ke Gyurchi Kepa Nyambar Mepa Yang Kongne Konto Pelwar Shon Possa la preziosamente
the precious, peaceful mind that is yet born arise and grow. May the one that is already born not degenerate and grow more and more.
Lame kutse rapten chi namkar trinle chokchur gepada losan tempe dreme sasum ki drove munsel tato ne gyur chi nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delek shi ninsen takto delek pe koncho sumke chinge lobo koncho sumke ngod Kuncho sumke trashisho. All'alba
At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
Buon appetito a tutti. Ci ritroviamo alle
Meet
3.
again at 3.
Alle 3 in realtà noi andremo nel
At
bosco.
3 actually we will go in the woods, and a practical thing,
Visto che siamo in tanti,
because we are a lot,
perché nel bosco possano
so
tutti
that
sentire bene.
everyone can listen well, we will use the system of simultaneous translation that we have here that also works in the woods. So the headphones, but then there will be the ones sitting more close, and then they will not need, but one can also sit far away and then can also listen to the translation.
Oggi è il primo giorno, poi
So today we need to organize ourselves, tomorrow will be more different, more easy.